I was always just wondering how Nghệ felt about it all. Nghệ has this very soft confidence to him, and the confidence that he took the photograph, but this confidence that he doesn't need these attributions and awards, that having his story shared to the world is what he wanted. And what Jannie says in the film is, Gary asked at the lunch table, like, what do you want out of all this? And it's just to share the story. And so I think that's sort of the icing on the cake for me, for him to be able to share it to the world, and not necessarily sort of these change in attributions that we all know are imperfect.
So Bao wasn't born until after the Vietnam War, but anyone who's Vietnamese American lives in the shadow of the Vietnam War. And so Bao, I'm just curious, do you remember when you first saw the photo of the Napalm Girl, and what did it mean to you when you saw it?
I can't recall the exact moment I saw it, but I knew it was, I knew as part of the imagery that was embedded in our memories as Vietnamese. There's the Napalm Girl photograph, there's the famous Eddie Adams photograph with the execution on the street. And what I was actually most surprised and honored by was seeing a Vietnamese name winning a Pulitzer Prize, winning a World Press Photo Award under that photograph. And, this film was very hard to make because of that, because I was fearful of the disruption that it could cause for our community. But when I heard the possibility that another Vietnamese American had possibly taken the photograph, I knew that story had been untold for over 50 years, so I knew it was important to tell that story.
Yeah, after I saw the film the first time, that was the first question I called you to ask, like, as a Vietnamese American, whether you had conflicted feelings, or whether you at any point thought to yourself, well, maybe this shouldn't be exposed because of what it could do to the person originally credited with the photo.
Yeah, it was certainly a long process for me to think whether I would, join this film, because, Gary, Fiona, and Terri had started their investigation, and I wasn't sure if, again, wanted to disrupt the whole sort of narrative and the status quo in many ways. But I always wanted to be a journalist, a photojournalist when I was younger. And one of the things that I always believed journalism to uphold, a pillar that it would uphold, was the pursuance of truth. And just the pursuance of truth, you wouldn't have to find it necessarily. And I knew that what Gary, Fiona, and Terri were doing was asking questions, listening, and trying to find out the truth. And knowing that was sort of the tenets of their investigation, I knew I was in a privileged position. There's not many Vietnamese American filmmakers out there, to be honest, and to be approached to tell the story, I knew that I try my best to handle it with sensitivity, with empathy, and I hope we did that with this film.
Nghệ, can you hear me down there? Yes, he can. Nghệ, I just have to ask you, after over 50 years, what does it feel like to finally get justice? And did you ever think that you would see this day? And Jannie, if you could comment on how this has impacted your father since the film began, since you heard that there was this investigation going on.
I'm going to answer for Nghệ. Okay. First of all, I think Nghệ very happy to be here. He never thought he could be here with you tonight. And thank you for coming to see the movie and listen to his story, finally. My father actually has been very upbeat, very happy since the movie came out, and he understood that, that people now know he the one who took the photo. He's very proud and thankful, very thankful. And he very much appreciate Gary, Bao, Terri, Fiona, and many more for helping him to tell his side of the story. I'm so nervous, I'm sorry. Yeah, but that what,
Jannie, did your father ever think that he would see this day?
say it again, I'm sorry.
Did your father ever think that he would see this day?
No, he never thought. He never thought he could be here tonight, you know, with all of you. And for him to tell you, I took the photo. It meant a lot to him. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Terri and Fiona, as the producers of this film, why did you feel that this story had to be told?
Well, so initially the way this story came to us was it actually came to Gary, and it was 2 nights before Christmas, Christmas 2022, and he got an email from the whistleblower, Carl Robinson. And he and I then spent the entire Christmas thinking, what are we going to do with this information? And in the meantime, texting and emailing with Carl to try and get further information to verify his story. And Gary said, I think this needs, this needs to be a long print piece, and we need to give it to the right journalist, and I'd like to be part of that. But anyway, we went round and round, and in the end I said, look, you know what, this is an incredible story, and if it pans out, we really need to start documenting it from the beginning, because if you leave it too late and it turns out that that it really is something, then we will have missed that moment. So we really started looking into it then. And that was when I talked with Terri, that I worked with for a long time, and we started investigating it. And then after we'd investigated, well, you can add to that.
I think once we met Carl, the question was, should we believe Carl? His allegation was really serious. And what out of his story could we verify, given that it's over 50 years since this had happened? And then how much reporting would it take? And as soon as we realized the breadth of what we were going to have to do, there was no way we could do this without a partnership with someone like Bao. And we were very, very fortunate that after I explained the entire story to him, he didn't run out the other door, and that he agreed to do it with us, so.
Gary, throughout the film, we watch you grappling with so many questions, one of which is how to think about Nick Ut. Someone in the film said that he is also a victim. In so many ways, he was this credit was sort of thrown at him. How do you see him? And do you think that it's possible that when this happened, he may have thought that he actually took the photo?
It's very difficult for me to put myself in Nick's head, and I wouldn't want to do that, to be honest. I don't want to speak for him, certainly I want to think for him. So I don't know what he thinks. I'd love to have found out. We tried to interview him. We approached him, I think, 16 or 17 times in various different ways. But I think, I made the point in the film that Nick was a victim. Just to be really clear, it wasn't Nick's idea to do this. He didn't ask for it. He didn't dream this up himself. It was something that was given to him, and something that he has had to live with for as long as Nay has. And, that's a heavy burden to carry. So, yeah, I do see him as a victim.
And do you think that Horst Foss, do you think that when he saw the photo, he knew the impact that photo would have globally?
Yeah, we know what Horst thought, because he wrote to his boss, Hal Buell, in New York that day. he advised him that he was sending a photograph on the wire that showed child nudity, which was against the policy of AP. But he said, trust me, this photograph will become an icon of all time. So he knew very well what this photograph meant and how important it would be. Yeah.
And what do you think it would have meant for him to have submitted this photo from this unknown stringer over Nick Ut, who was a staff photographer with AP?
Yeah. A photograph that you enterprise, that is created by one of your staff members, that indicates to New York that you're doing your job. It indicates to every photo editor, every editor that might use that photograph in the United States and elsewhere in the world the following day, that you enterprise that photograph. You worked for that photograph. It's authored by AP, by the Saigon Bureau. If something walks through the door from a stringer, in this case, Nay, who they didn't know, they'd never seen before, and who they would never see again, it shows that, it was just something that came by chance. You didn't work for the picture. And so it has a different value, certainly internally, yes.
It occurs to me, the Vietnam War was over 50 years ago, and we have learned since so many secrets about the entire period. Was this just one of those secrets?
Sure, it was an open secret amongst a very small number of people, particularly the Vietnamese journalistic community in Saigon at the time, and then shortly afterwards amongst the foreign press corps. And they carried it with them and kept it internal until really about 2010, when Carl first started to really talk about it more openly, but again amongst that circle. And they kept it very quiet. And as you saw in the film, they threatened Carl and made it very difficult for him, very uncomfortable for him to talk about it. But it's a miracle that it stayed so quiet.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, this is something I said in the introduction briefly, but there's a generation of Vietnamese who never had a chance to tell their story. They had these secrets and these memories for a long time. And I think, it's funny, I did a short film about my parents and asking them about sort of their journey as refugees. And they told me this harrowing story of them trying to escape 7 times and, their childhood experiences. And after the interview, I just asked them, why did it take you, 30 plus years to tell me the story? And they're like, well, you never asked. And so, the power of asking the question, there are what might seem like secrets to the world, but no one is just asking, this generation, what happened to you? There's culturally, I think, this idea of letting the past be the past, but I think it's up to my generation, future generations, to engage and reckon with the stories in the past and the history that was given to us, right? We in many ways have to be the bridge of the hyphen, as an Asian American, as a Vietnamese American.
Bao, you mentioned your parents. Have they seen the film?
They haven't seen it. They're bigger Lionel Richie fans, so they like my last film better. But I think they'll like this one. Yeah, this film comes out the day after Thanksgiving on Netflix, so it's a good sort of. More adult family watch, I would imagine, but I'll watch it with my parents the day after Thanksgiving.
Jean, I don't want to ignore you down there. So Jean is the composer of the film. Yes, give it up for Jean. Jean, can you just talk about your approach tonally and musically for this film?
Yeah, it started off with conversations with Bao, about the central themes in the movie. And I always approach it from an emotional perspective. Okay, so what are the emotional themes, underlying the film? And so, Bao gave me some direction about, kind of like a sound world that he was interested in. And then what I really appreciated as a collaborator was being given the freedom to explore how to, flesh that out. And as a matter of fact, the very first theme that I wrote, which wasn't a picture, I typically write themes first and then conform that to picture. But the first theme was Nye's theme. And it's a very soft piano, which you hear at the end of the movie. And I was just so inspired by Nye's journey. And the thinking behind it was, strength and power through softness and intimacy, as opposed to being loud and flashy and drawing attention to oneself. I just found so much confidence, so much power in Nye's story, but also sensitivity and emotionality. And that's something that was the starting point. And then another big theme which you hear throughout the film is based on memory, and what does deconstructed memory sound like in a score, and what does that feel like, and how does that come back? How does it morph into something else? And then how does it come back later as something recognizable, in which it becomes something that starts off as unclear, and then becoming clear towards the end. So that's kind of in a nutshell.
I want to take some questions from the audience, but first I just have to acknowledge this withdrawal of accreditation by the World Press Photo Organization. What did that mean to you that happened, Gary, after working on this for so long?
It's never happened before.
In its 70-year history.
Yeah, in its 75-year history. So that's it's a huge acknowledgement. And I think that it means different things. It'll mean something very different to Nye than it might mean to my profession. But I think what it says to my profession is that, we can be held accountable, right? And it might take 50 years, but there might be an accounting, there might be a reckoning. And I think for countless photographers and journalists who photograph their own countries at war and stories in their own communities who have been erased, frankly, from the narratives of those stories, it was a very big moment. And I received a lot of emails and messages from photographers in the majority world in the global south who work under very, very difficult conditions, who felt very passionately and very strongly about it. So, yeah, I think it was a very, very significant move, huge move. Yeah.
Bao, did it surprise you that happened?
I'm not part of sort of the photojournalism world, so I didn't know sort of the protocols and how this would happen. So when I learned from Gary and Fiona and Terri that this is pretty momentous after 70 years, I was always just wondering how Nye felt about it all. And, as Jean put it very eloquently, Nye has this very soft confidence to him, and the confidence that he took the photograph, but this confidence that he doesn't need these attributions and awards, that having his story shared to the world is what he wanted. And what Jannie says in the film is, Gary asked at the lunch table, like, what do you want out of all this? And it's just to share the story. And so I think that's sort of the icing on the cake for me, for him to be able to share it to the world, and not necessarily sort of these change in attributions that we all know are imperfect, right?
We have a couple minutes for questions. If anyone has any questions up there, if you don't mind just standing and speaking loudly.
I was fascinated with the forensic deconstruction of the footage and the stills and everything. Can you expand a little bit more about how you work with people and kind of what went into all of that? Because that was kind of one of the kind of important moments in the film that kind of blew the whole thing wide open.
Okay. Okay, well, Terri and I worked on that one, and we engaged Index Investigation there was a recognition at some point in the film that we'd done a lot of the journalism, but that we hadn't actually got a smoking gun. And it was unlikely we were going to get a smoking gun, but if there was some way of determining that there was some more accurate proof outside of the reporting, that would be helpful for an audience and for the film itself. So we went to Index and talked to them, and they explained about their frame matching, and we were super lucky because they need to do that. You need satellite photography, and there was a satellite image of the road in Trang Bang that was taken in November 1972, and it was one of the first satellite images made by the US government. And there's a crazy story. They would drop the film from the satellite, and they would fly a plane to pick it up. And
with a parachute, yeah, had a parachute.
So therefore we had that's what they would use as the framework. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I just want to reiterate that we knew what reporting we had. Fiona had been through the photographs, every single photograph that we could find extensively, and the detail of it. But we wanted to have the external participation of somebody else who could literally take it to another step. And when we found the 1972 satellite photo, that for that type of forensic analysis is critical for measuring, and as you see in the film, and the archaeology, and because obviously it doesn't look like that at all today. So.
Let's see what happens when AP watches that.
I think it's the first time that forensics like that have been used in a documentary like this. I can't recall.
Well, it was fascinating.
It's new technology.
Really fascinating. We have time for one more question. Yes, up there in the back, if you wouldn't mind standing and speaking loudly. You're talking about World Press photo?
Yeah, if you're taking a credit away and you're saying it wasn't there, they did their own investigation.
Yes.
Would they not have credited it?
There are a number of people who are standing on the road who could have taken the photograph, so it's easier to determine who didn't. Yeah, theoretically, but only one claims to have, and that's Nay. And the only other person we can see with a camera in that photograph, TV Tan, claims it was Nay. Nobody claims it was anybody else, but it's easier for World Press to, analyze and present who didn't take the photograph than who did. So we believe Nay took the photograph. And there's a fourth forensic investigation that has been done, that has just been published in France this week. You can see it in Libération, or a report on it in Libération and Télérama, and that concurs with our investigation and World Press's investigation, and it differentiates itself from AP's.
Well, again, kudos to all of you. Truly remarkable journalism. Thank you so much. Bao, tell everyone, remind everyone when they can see the film and where?
Netflix on November 28th.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.